old folks talk about them so-called black country delicacies, they mean faggots and pies, the grotty dick, you know. Well, this story, I suppose, is about one of those black country delicacies. One I've never tried myself. I don't know if I want to anyway. But here we go. It was a dark, cold, windy October night when a rather breathless Billy Twiggins pushed open the door of a black country pub that stood not too far away from here. He looked cautiously inside, don't want a customer to be seen. But behind the bar was the landlord, just polishing the glasses, you know, the way they do. The landlord saw him, he says, "Come in, friend," he says, "sit by the fire and I'll pull you a pint of our prize ale." And he pulled him a pint and he took it over to him. And Billy, he took a sip of it, a cautious sip. And he said, "Gone." And the landlord says, "Well, stranger," he says, "you strike me as a bloke who's had a fright tonight." He says, "Fright?" He says, "I tell you what, pull me another pint of that beer and I'll tell you all about it." So the landlord pulled him another pint, he brought it over. And Billy started to tell his tale. He says, "It all started just before 6 o'clock this evening, when I stepped into the bar of the Green Mon public house, right opposite the church in Dudley. And as I did, the barman was just putting the last of 6 pints on the bar. When the church clock started to strike 6, he picked the first pint up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the pint pot hit the counter just as the church clock stopped chiming. Something I've done every day for the last few years. Says, initially I did it as a bet. But you know what the people in Dudley are like? They said it was a fluke. They said I couldn't do it again. So just to prove them wrong, I does it every night. Well, when I've had a drink, I always get a bit peckish. So I said to the barman, "What we got to eat?" He says, "We've got your favourite, ship's head broth." I says, "Don't bother to put it in a dish, just bring the pot out." And I laid me money down. He brought out the pot, and I got hold of the pot. I started. But then I had the shock of my life, because the bottom of that pot, what I was expecting to see was the sheep's skull, his empty eye sockets. But instead of that, I said, this face, this horrible face, with red eyes glaring at me. Well, I knew what that was. It was the face of death. I dropped the pot and I got out of there. I started running. I don't know how far I've run, and I don't know where I am, because I've never been down this way before. But I come to an halt right outside this pub. I knew I couldn't run any farther. Anyway, the landlord says, "Well, Billy, that's one hell of a tale." He says, and it's great. He says, "Hang on a minute. You called me Billy. How do you know my name Billy? I never told you." Anyway, the landlord says, "Well, who else could it be? You might not have been down this way before, but your reputation has. I mean, 6 pints at 6 o'clock, and your love of ship's head broth. Who else could it be but Billy Twiggins?" He says, they got to talking, and the landlord says, "You know," he says, "this 6 pints at 6 o'clock, it seems a bit of an half measure to me. Have you ever thought to go in the full Monty?" Billy knew what he was on about. He was on about 12 pints at 12 o'clock. See, now Billy had been intending to try this out New Year's Eve. But you know how it is, it's the same with a new song or a new story out. You practice a bit of tongue first. And he'd been practicing and he'd almost got it perfect. Well, the landlord says, I tell you what, have a go at it. And I'll pay for all your beer tonight, and we'll have a little bit on the side. And the time was getting on, and Billy said, set him up. So he did. He set up 12 pints along the bar. The clock started to chime. Well, the first 6 was no problem at all. It was well versed in that. Then 7, 8, 9, no problem. 10 was a little bit sticky. Thought it was going to fall. What? Down it went. Then 11, 12, and bosh! The glass hit the counter just as the clock finished striking 12. The landlord said, well done, Billy. He says, that was brilliant. He said, but you've got to give me a chance to get my money back. He says, what about sheep's shed breath? He says, I've got to be a pot of it at the back. He says, it's been simmering all day and I ain't sold a drink. I had a customer in all day. And Billy said, well, you know, I'm feeling a bit peckish. Bring it out. So out he bought this big pot of sheep's shed. And he got it. And he started, of course he got halfway through and he remembered the last time. He got a bit cautious, but down he went and down he went. And when he got to the bottom, sure enough, there in the bottom of the pot was the ship's skull with its empty eye sockets. Phew, Billy boy. But when he dropped the pot and he looked at the landlord, there was a face with his blazing red eyes. He says, it's you? He says, oh, it's me, Billy. He says, you know, he says, you worried me early on tonight when I said you're in the Green Mon. He says, oh, he says, you worried me as well because it was the wrong place and the wrong time. And this is the right place and the right time. And at that, Billy dragged down Jed, the bar of that pub, not too far away from here. Now, I know someone you like an happy ending. Well, I'm sorry about that. But, well, it is Halloween, eh?